Hello, welcome to MJR RPG. The following is a review of Chaosium Con. I finally made it out to Chaosium Con this year, which I believe was the third one. So the following is just a very brief overview of what I ran, what I played, what events I snuck into, as well as some general thoughts and lamentations. I'll eventually write up full reviews for at least the games I ran, starting off with Lamentation number 1. I should have arrived earlier. I got in very late Thursday night and left very early Monday morning. If at all possible, I'd rather sacrifice a bit of the slower Sunday in favor of getting into some of the fun social shenanigans on Thursday, like the LARP, speakeasy, and general drunken carousing in the bar. Moving on to Friday, Session 1. The first Call of Cthulhu game I only ran Call of Cthulhu this time actually, was Cartoon Reanimation by Nanamine Kizashi from the Japanese Call of Cthulhu scenario, Bibliothèque 13. This was my first time running the scenario, but I've been meaning to run it since I bought the book a few years ago. And by a few years, I mean last year. I had a blast with it, and it seemed like most of my players did too. Literally in the case of one investigator who accidentally blasted their own face off. Incidentally, the player was the Apocalypse Players podcast owned Joseph Chance, which I didn't notice until the end, proving how absolutely god-awful I am at placing names and voices. The scenario is a delightful mix of cartoony goofiness with horrific violence and body horror. It has a nice classic scenario vibe, being set in 1920s California, the only such scenario in the anthology, the rest all being modern-day Japan, and a largely free-form investigation design. A small nitpick I have with the Bibliothèque 13 scenarios in general is the lack of pre-gen investigators, or any real suggestions on how to make suitable investigators, but luckily all the players in the group really took the basic pre-gens I threw together and ran with them, playing off one another to make for a very dynamic group, despite the short runtime. Also, it's the first session I've had where I can say 5 investigators died and 1 escaped, despite only having 4 players. A hint for anyone running this, be prepared to hand over control of the NPCs to the players as backups, or have some extra investigators just in case. Rabbits turn out to be a lot deadlier than they look. Lamentation number 2. The food in the convention hall was firmly acceptable. It did not make me sick, and it provided the calories required to not pass out. I also completely missed it on the first day and accidentally had the hotel breakfast in the terrace restaurant. That was an expensive mistake. Also, while the Bear Claw coffee truck was fantastic, I feel the convention food in general is a solid one-time thing. I got very tired of tater tots very quickly. Next time, I will find friendly people to latch onto earlier to go get food at the nearby strip malls. I didn't do that until Saturday, meaning Friday was the day of tater tots. Friday session number 2. I played in Matt Doc Tracy, that's opposed to Dactyl Doc, who I unfortunately did not meet in person this time. I'll talk more about not meeting people later. Matt Doc Tracy's run of Paul Fricker's Dockside Dogs. Also, following note on not meeting Paul Fricker. I knew going in that this was a bonkers scenario, and it certainly was. Starts off as Reservoir Dogs, slowly gets weird, and then flies off a cliff into Crazy Town in a very fun way. The players were all great, and Doc did a great job, and very obviously enjoyed tormenting us. You can always tell a session is going well when a player, Bucho in this case, repeatedly threatens to murder the keeper. Also, he just took control of the keeper once, which is very fun. Can't say too much about it without getting into super spoilers, and I'm very much aiming to torture my own group with this someday, so let's save it for a full review. Now for a mini lamentation. I saw Paul Fricker a few times as I was heading to things while he was also engaged in things. Next time, I need to engineer a complicated plan to run into him directly. Or I could just say hi to him like a normal human being. Now a little bonus thought. In all the games I ran, and in Doc's Dockside Dogs, the Bouts of Madness in the rulebook was replaced with Ruined Relics, which is Aaron Sinner and Todd Walden, Bouts of Madness Deck. I've been meaning to write a full review of these cards, but in short, they are almost in every way superior to the regular table. They especially, and obviously, work best in person, as they are cards, and it was a joy to hand over the deck to a player whenever their investigator had a bout, and then watch their face as they laugh or cringe at whatever madness is about to be inflicted on their character. I've only bought the PDF, and so printed out and cut out the deck, but Doc was very cool and had the actual physical deck, which I'm going to need to buy now. He also had the neat idea of having players take 3 cards, then choose one they think is most applicable to the current situation, which was a very nice touch and something I'm going to steal for the future. If you haven't tried the deck yet, I 100% recommend it, and I'll have a full write-up of it in like 7 years when I get around to it. Lamentation number 3. I enjoyed grabbing pins and stickers from all the podcast tables and people wandering around. One thing I had been hoping for was a shirt. Unfortunately, no one seemed to be selling shirts. Next time, I will order a shirt beforehand. Everyone had fun t-shirts. I did not. This brought me much sadness. Next up, Friday and Saturday, evening events. After running cartoon reanimation in the morning, Joseph revealed who he was by saying his name and pointing at his branded t-shirt. Again, I'm very bad at identifying people. And said the Apocalypse players were doing a live improv actual play at night. I very intentionally left all the third evening slots open, so I popped in. I'd never been to a live actual play, and I only really listened to actual plays for Narios. I'm stop calling them scenarios, I call them Narios. I only listened to actual plays for scenarios I'm about to run. I had no idea what I was getting into, but this, and the second show Saturday night, which I eventually went to, ended up being kind of the highlight of the con for me. The four guys were just so goddamn funny, taking all the weird suggestions from the crowd and really running with them, and expertly playing off one another. The first show ended up being about a stinky zoo. The second show was about sentient, very shy yeast at a distillery. I'm not sure how to summarize beyond that, and I don't think I can, so I won't. I can only imagine how annoying it is to coordinate everything from across the Atlantic to get over here for the team, but I really do hope they come out next year, as the shows are just a great way to round off the night and a segue to heading to the bar. Next up, Saturday Session 1. I ran No Breaking Off, which really should be titled I Can't Stop It, as it's just the Japanese title, but I digress, by Uchiyama Yasujiro, from the Japanese modern-day sourcebook and scenario collection Cthulhu 2020. I am quickly becoming a big fan of Uchiyama's scenarios, and No Breaking Off hasn't changed that progression at all. It's a relatively simple and short scenario, but it has a lovely creeping tension and then a sudden jolt into absolute chaos. It's more of an atmospheric piece than some of Uchiyama's other more mini sandboxy scenarios, but it still gives plenty of room for the players to wander about and approach issues in their own ways. It's essentially just 3 scenes strung together, but investigators are largely free to do what they want in each scene, even if they are ultimately linearly connected. This is a very light example of a somewhat common structure I've noticed in some Japanese scenarios that lean heavy into feeling like a visual novel or text adventure, but done via a keeper. And I did want to show off that style at the con, but without doing anything really strictly linear. Lamentation number 4. I scheduled all of the sessions I was GMing into morning slots, as that's when I'm most on the ball. Unfortunately, the 2 events, or really one combined event, that I was most interested in attending turned out to be right during the first session, that being the Miskatonic Repository Creators Meeting Creators event. I'm sure it had a better name, and it had mimosas. And the Miskatonic Repository Books pop-up stall. I did sneak out during a break to try and find 2 books I've been wanting to nab there to avoid Drive-Thru-RPG's shipping prices and lead times to Canada. I was able to get one, David Trotty's 1920s Japan source book, Empire in Shadows. But unfortunately the other, Heinrich Moore's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Carcosa, supposedly sold out immediately. I later did get at least a chance to see the book in person, along with Heinrich himself, of course, that evening at the bar, and it is one big chunky book, and also so very pretty. I didn't have any time to pop into the mixer though, and even with the session ending early, the event had already wrapped up. Assuming it's at the same time next year, I'll definitely be leaving Saturday morning open so I can chat with other writers and editors, artists, etc., etc., etc. Networking. On to Saturday session number 2. The second and last scenario I played was run by none other than the creative director himself, Mike Mason, running an unpublished, yet to be published? I'm not really sure what it's going to be used for. Scenario called Aurora Blue. The players took the roles of U.S. Treasury agents raiding a supposed moonshine distillery in rural Alaska. I won't give much away as it's not available yet, but I did very much enjoy its setup with the players being given pretty much all the time they want to plan out the raid however they like. We spent a solid half-hour brainstorming and devising a plan to infiltrate the property, as well as backup plans and contingencies. Of course, everything immediately went to hell and we had to improvise, aka shoot and blow things up. My investigator's highlight was trying to use first aid on a grandma and ending her face accidentally. Also, a near TPK in spirit. It was a very fun session, and of course, it was an honor to watch Mike Mason work. Also, some really good maps. Those will be fun to look at more, hopefully, eventually, in some sort of book. Saturday evening. The rest of Saturday consisted of getting some dice at the vendor hall and having the willpower to not buy any books I wouldn't actually be using anytime soon. I really wanted to grab RuneQuest and the Pendragon rulebooks, but I currently don't have any groups to run those with. Getting away from the hotel to eat some restaurant food, going to a second Apocalypse Players improv show, and going to the bar to mingle. It was a good time. I need to make more room for that next time. Lamentation number 5. I am garbage with branding. As mentioned earlier in the shirts bit, lots of people had podcast shirts. Also, most people are smart enough to use their real names on their online stuff. As I am a very smart person, I go by either MJRRPG or JR on all the internet things, while my badge is just my real name. I did have stickers of my little dice logo thingy, which I promptly forgot to use pretty much the whole time. I really should have just stuck one of them to my badge or shirt or face to make it easier finding internet acquaintances. So I met a solid quarter of the people I meant to say hi to, and most likely walked past most of the other 3/4 simply because there was no way for them to recognize me, and I had tunnel vision and wasn't paying attention. A handful of people I played with did mention they read or listened to this blog podcast thingy, which was absolutely lovely to know I'm not completely talking into the empty void. Or at least a handful of people are kind enough to lie to me about me not yelling into the void. On to Sunday Session 1, also known as the last session. I ran Uchiyama Yasujito's 3 requests from Bibliotech 13, the second time doing so. I really love the scenario, and I already wrote a review of it. The players were once again great, and I loved watching them piece together what is happening and coming up with plans. This is really one of the best scenarios for that, as the information and goals given to the players is fairly front-loaded, giving them plenty of time to decide amongst themselves what to do, and each time they get a new piece of information, it can completely change their perception of what's going on. It's impossible for me not to smile and eyeball the players whenever they're spitballing theories that either just happen to be exactly what's happening, or could be so much worse than what's actually happening. Special side note that Colin Richards, writer of the Miskatonic Repository scenario Signal to Noise, and an amazing artist, was present and did a just fantastic sketch of his investigator while playing, complete with dogfish, hamster, and chicken wings, which will mean nothing if you haven't played the scenario. And finally, the Sunday wind down. I didn't book a session for the second slot for Sunday. I just wanted to relax, so I instead joined Lex and Alex from the RPG Reanimators. They're also in the Into the Darkness live play thing. For some food, then milled about for a bit, and said goodbye to anyone I recognized leaving. Then I slept for a very long time. And to round it off, Lamentation number 6. I came in with a goal to play RuneQuest and a Pendragon game. I did not do that. Womp womp. This was my first ever in-person convention, and I think it was a good choice. The size was perfect. Not too massive, but not particularly small either, and with a scope that makes sure almost everyone has something in common with everyone else. I fully plan to attend next year, assuming the airfare and my pocketbook continue to vaguely align. Also, I need to better schedule so I can attend more seminars and shows and meet with people. Thank you for listening. As always, credit to Cryochamber for use of their album Cthulhu. Until next time, have a good one.